All right, let's continue, guys. I just want to make a quick question. I personally, I don't know how you guys, I like that we're evolving our format. We used just to talk, which is also fine with me. Anything is fine with me. If we talk, but to have a little lecture like David did, like a Harold did, for about like maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then discussion that diverts us sometimes to some of the things. To me, I think it's very nice. I would like us to find the next guy, Ramban, who can do similar for Ramban. If you guys know anybody who can talk about Ramban, that would be nice chaser for us to start some other times. Okay, that's all I had to mention. Okay, guys, up to you now.
Ruben was in the middle of explaining about the plasma thing. And I had
Plasma, yes, electrons become photons.
Yeah, well, just Schroeder tries to reconcile the Torah narrative with modern physics. And so he says that according to Ramban, like I said, it's this, he used I think a Greek word like a helium or a hilum. It was this vague material, which, and there was still darkness everywhere. And out of this material, everything else was formed. And again, after that, light was formed. He also goes on to explain like a lot of people who are anti-Bible will say, well, you know, first God creates the heaven and earth and the oceans and the dry land, the plants, and then the sun, the moon, and the stars he creates. Ramban says very clearly that God had already created them, but they didn't appear until it was the third day. But according to modern science, the earth was covered with cloud layer after it cooled and after the oceans formed, and there was still could be plants because the ultraviolet gets through the cloud layer, but eventually the cloud layer thinned out and the sun and the moon and stars appeared. So he says that's why the sun, moon, and stars don't show up till day 3. A lot of things like that. He also tries to reconcile 7 days creation with the high pressure and gravity of the early times, but that doesn't quite work out. Other physicists have checked it out and said it's not enough to reconcile, 7 24-hour days with, or 6 24-hour days with 3.5 billion years. But yeah, just and that's why I'm interested in finding somebody who can, authoritatively talk about Ramban, because I'm also interested in ways. I mean, we all know that it's been less than 100 years that the Western science believed that the Earth was created, the universe was created ex nihilo, and we've known that for several thousand years. So there's a lot of things like that. What I'm really interested is there's been an attempt to reconcile.
We don't know the world was created ex nihilo. We don't know that.
Well, it says that's the Torah. The Torah insists that that's the case. And
the
Ramban,
Torah, yeah, you said that science knows that the world was created ex nihilo.
That's the theory now. That it came into existence as an almost infinitely small point.
I can understand.
Matter and
I
antimatter,
completely can understand it. My mind is just completely. I mean, I can wrap my mind around this.
Which should have annihilated back into energy, because matter and antimatter should be equal amounts out of nothing. It should disappear, but somehow some of the antimatter did not recombine with the matter, and it's like 1 part in 10 to the 40th or something. It's some ridiculously small amount, and the entire universe is made out of the matter that didn't cancel out. And to me, like when it says God tried to make the universe equal parts, out of justice, out of pure din, but
no, pure.
So I think it was he tried to make it out of
first din, then he went to Hesed.
First din, right? But he saw it couldn't stand that way, so he had to make it more chesidic. So to me, it's like he wanted to make matter and antimatter exactly equal, but he saw that it all disappears. So out of chesed, he made a little more of the positive than the negative, positive matter than negative matter.
I have, if you want to, guys, I have a perfect example of, I always wondered what Hesed and Gevurah. And the Kabbalah says there's always a little bit of a Gevurah in Hesed, and there's also a little bit of Hesed in Gevurah. And I never could understand it. Do you guys understand? Can you have an example? I have an example, I can tell you if you have an example. How can Hesed have Gevurah?
There are examples. There's something else I wanted to mention just before we go on to the to stay on the same point over here is just the concept of ex nihilo, right? So taking religion out of it, just looking at it from trying to come from a logical perspective. There's either two ways to approach it. Either the world has always been here and all the matter and everything we know has always been here, which basically, if you believe that, you're basically believing the world is infinite and time is infinite. So you believe there's an infinite element.
Which is separate from God.
And if you believe it ultimately came from a point, it started somewhere, that point ultimately came from somewhere else. It came somewhere, you're going to either evolve from another place, evolve from another place. Where did the first matter come from? So did it come from a point which is beyond human grasp, beyond human understanding? And that, if someone believes that, you're basically believing that something came from nothing. The nothing means just another word for beyond human grasp or beyond human understanding. And in Kabbalah, that's the nothing that it's referring to. It's referring to something which is beyond human understanding. It's not something we can know, or maybe something we can never know. It's totally beyond human knowledge. And even according to from what I understand, metaphysical string theory, everything is vibrating and coming in and out of you, and we can't even see. Things are going in and out of human perspective all the time, or perception. So there's a lot of crazy.
String theory is interesting because it says there are 4 elemental strings, and everything in the universe is created out of these strings. And Kabbalah says there are 4 elementary particles which make everything in the universe. They call it
strings attached.
Fire, air, earth, and
Ramban
water.
also, yeah.
So somebody asked one of the Rebbeim.
What are they called? What are they called?
The Greek philosophy as well, yeah.
Greek philosophy. So someone asked Rav, who was familiar with all this stuff, that, well, we know that there's atoms smaller than water, et cetera, et cetera. And the Rav answered, no, this is smaller than atoms. In other words, subatomic is another word for smaller than atoms. So if string theory turns out to be true, that would also reconcile with Zohar. But
I'm sorry,
so
but
far it hasn't worked out.
There's a whole other element to creation, which I think people are like, oh, God created what created. What was created first? The atomic, atomic force, the nuclear force, the gravity. Where did these come into creation? Which concept evolved first? What was the first
say
concept?
That they say that initially it was a combined universal force. All the forces, the 4 forces, were combined into one, mega force, and that the forces over the first few microseconds and cooling of the universe separated out. There's a whole.
So
this is why sometimes you should listen to the Rambam and shut up when you speak about God.
So no, you also got to understand Ramban in context.
I'm talking about physics. I'm not talking about God. I don't know anything about God.
So
the
hang on
Rambam
a second.
says something like this, which is I think the only thing that makes sense to me, and that is that because basically the world is contingent, so it could have been and it could have not been. It's not metziut emet. It's not real. So there has to be a metziut emet, a real reality in English, which is a bad kind of translation, but there has to be a metziut emet that holds the contingent reality, which is not metziut emet. And that metziut emet is God for Rambam, because he said that God is metziut emet.
It's funny that you say that, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I remember hearing someone quote this. I haven't seen source for it. They said, "How do we know the world exists?" When we discussed this before, where the chief rabbi Jonathan Sachs says, in the rest of the world, they're questioning whether God exists. When Chabad philosophy are discussing, we know God exists. That's simple. How do we know the world exists? How do we know the world exists? So they said the only reason we know the world exists is simply because it says in the Torah, "Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz." If it wouldn't have said that in the Torah, we would have a serious question that we have no proof that the world exists.
I don't think we have. No, I don't think, because you have a consciousness, so you exist.
But you also know that all your senses lie to you, and when you close your eyes
I think
No, I
therefore
don't
I
know
am.
what my
Nothing
senses
there,
lie
so
to
how do
me.
you-
I
how
don't
do you
think my
prove it?
senses lie to me in such a profound
Right,
way.
and it's like Aristotle in philosophy. Aristotle was asking this: is it really real? I mean, do I
Is it-
imagine it? Is it
How do we
real?
know?
You know what we say when somebody dies, Chas v'Chalila, we say he's gone from Olam HaSheker hazeh to Olam HaEmet, right? So, מה זה עולם השקר? מה זה עולם השקר? Is it just a metaphor for saying that this world is kind of a dirty?
Illusionary.
I
No,
think
not just
Rambam mentions
illusionary,
that.
not just illusionary, but a bad world where there's lots
Oh.
of trouble and there's lots of violence and prostitution and dirty things and sins, and that's the olam and lies, sheker,
Yeah.
olam sheker, and into olam emet, which is the where truth lies. Well, what is truth? Well, truth is God, and well, what God says. There's things we cannot express because of our human limitation.
Yeah.
That's one thing. This is why philosophy about it is going to be. I mean, talking about it and writing about it will be endless because we are
Endless.
limited. We are so limited in our knowledge. We know about atoms. We know about stuff, but still
I know.
there's. I don't think there really can be a reconciliation.
I
between
read
physics.
I read a book at one time, a long time when I was a kid, about multidimensional space. That was starting from religious, but on space, and then the guy saying, "What's a zero-dimension space? That's a point. What's a one-dimensional space? That's a line. Imagine like a line, like a string, in which the humans, or people, some creatures live. Well, if you live in a string only, you don't have the perpendicular to the string dimension. You only can see in front of you, in the back of you. That's all you can see. And if you have a two-dimensional space, it's like a piece of paper. So a piece of paper is two-dimensional. And if people living inside the paper, they can see everything within the plane of paper, but they don't see anything perpendicular to the paper. And then, so that's two dimensions. Three dimensions, like a cube. So the cube is like it's our space. So imagine, like, for example, if your analogy of space travel, let's say this is two-dimensional space, unless one guy lives here and one guy lives here. So from this
Okay,
point,
I have to go now. It's great
Okay.
speaking to you next
all
week.
right,
Bye.
see you next
Bye,
Tuesday.
Mandy.
See you.
Bye.
So from this place to this place takes like 1,000,000 years. But if you fold the paper like this, and the guy can travel across from the plane like this, it
Space travel.
takes like
Wormholes.
yeah, so the same analogy can go to the three-dimensional space into the four-dimensional space. So
I'll just give you a question. I'll just give a question. Why do we need why do we need a book that tells us very, very profound things about the creation of reality around us, just in order to make us kill sheep?
Yeah.
What's
Come
going
again?
on? What?
I didn't quite catch the.
You didn't quite catch. Why do we need to know physics and the mechanism of creating such a huge thing as the world, and then the result of that is sacrificing sheep?
Well, you're talking about one part of Judaism and another part of Judaism.
Mhm.
No,
The one,
the Torah is, I see the Torah as a book of commandments of behavior to a
Yeah.
certain people, which is the Israelite people, the Jewish people. And you can disagree with me completely. Why do I need to know? Let's put it in other words. Let's say if I would have, or we would have, a revelation of God in front of us, and God would say, you don't need to know what I am, You don't need to know my name. You cannot know me, but I've created you. And therefore, I want you to forever and ever give me 2 sacrifices a day, a sheep in the morning and a sheep in the afternoon. I think that you and I would be so terrified that we would actually do that for the rest of our lives. We would sacrifice a sheep in the morning and sacrifice a sheep in the afternoon, because the revelation of such a great thing in front of our eyes would have left such an impression on us that we would never have been released from it. So
Yeah,
the question is
except
this.
a few weeks later, we would say, "Where is our meat?" And then we start building a golden calf. That's
Yes, could be. It could be. You know, the problem with the golden calf is that they created it. They've made it right in front of Mount Sinai. That's one of the biggest problems in the Torah. One of the biggest questions in the Torah is how can you explain such a thing? It's unexplainable to me. It's impossible. At least
But how
not
does
when
it? How the Egyptians just see all their firstborn die, and then they say, why do we let these people go? Let's get them." Like, what do you think is going to happen next? Duh.
So I mean, why do I need to know the speed of light in order to sacrifice sheep?
So
Okay,
human
so it's just a question.
curiosity. We're curious people. We want to understand things as much
Okay,
as we can.
so the question
Well-
is, are these 2 things connected? I'm just throwing a question out there.
Well,
I
think the
I think
idea
they're
that
not
God
connected
created
at
the
all.
universe.
I think they're not
Yeah, I think-
connected at all. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, God is constantly telling us there's more commandments not to worship idols than any other commandment in the Chumash. So that obviously some critical thing to get us away from thinking they're the sun and the moon and the stars and all these other getchkas we can worship. I think so. The key thing in Judaism is always philosophically to establish a philosophical basis that God is one, and that in fact everything is just a manifestation of God, even the reality we seem to see. And the idea that God created everything ex nihilo means that he's the one and the only. He created everything and he's in charge of everything. And that's why I think philosophically studying, Maaseh Bereshit is important from a philosophical point from Judaism, not like there was several creators, or I've seen some people describe that each world has its own God. Well, our Judaism doesn't hold by that. It says that no matter what manifestation there is in the universe, everything started at one point. It's like the Rebbe said, the whole universe is created at the point of the Yud, of Yud Kei Vav Kei. And he says a point mathematically is infinitely small. I mean, here we go again, talking almost like physics. So the idea that everything popped into reality from this one creator and that he is the only one and there's no other reality anywhere else besides him, that's critical to excluding all idol worship completely. And even with that, we still worship idols, but
Okay,
there's a
so-
difference. People
Yeah.
say, well, I've heard people say, well, there's a lot of rabbis who are, pedophiles and they cheat on their taxes and nursing home owners and blah, 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 blah. And I've always said there's a difference between believing that there is no God and you can do whatever you want or whatever you can get away with, and there is no absolute morality, and believing that there is an absolute morality. Makes a big difference. If you believe there's an absolute morality, even if you mess it up, you're messing up and there's a way to come back. If you don't believe there's an absolute morality, then
But
like
the absolute
Dostoevsky said,
morality,
if there is no God,
absolute morality,
everything's permitted. If there's no God, everything's permitted.
but the absolute morality also has to be established by something, by somebody. How do I come up with it? I mean, we all know that killing, not all, but most people know killing another person is not a good thing. How do we know that? I mean, that we innately know that. We don't need to learn Torah for that.
You know that there are people who don't know this. They don't feel this. They know it's wrong, but they don't feel it. The difference is that you feel that it's wrong. The people who don't feel that it's wrong, but know that it's wrong because of the standards of society they live in, these people are called psychopaths. They have an sort of a built-in problem in the mechanism of what we call
No
matzpun,
guilt, no shame, conscience.
conscience.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, no
but
guilt, and
you're
they
saying
don't
that
have guilt, they don't have shame.
Let
And
me
They
say-
that's
don't have guilt, they don't have
guilt
shame.
and shame is like pain. We all know that.
Oh,
I
you're
know as a
saying
doctor, if you don't have
those
pain, you
people
will
will
start
kill, right?
breaking up your whole body. You
You're
know,
saying those
and the
people
same
will
thing,
kill?
if you don't have guilt or shame, you'll break up the society.
But they're killers, they did. You're saying they're killers, they can kill?
Not all psychopaths are killers, but let's say 99% of serial killers are psychopaths.
But it's not, I mean, that's not a majority of society, it's a small fraction, right? Most people are nice.
It's well, I think it's a minority. Statistically, it's a minority. I mean, God forbid if it was a majority, because then everybody would be almost like Hitler.
It will be on that. Yeah, but let's say 99% of people innately know this is good. And the 1% doesn't, but it's good that people know. How do we know that it's good? We just
How do we know? You feel it's something that it's within you. And then so you have to you're trying to explain, why do I feel this is, because again, there is no absolute morality. If there was absolute morality, then lions would not kill the offspring of other male lions in order to make
Yeah.
female lions get in heat and then give birth to their offspring.
I wonder what I also heard
But
it several times.
animals
Why
are
is it
not.
they do it for that? Because maybe there's a reason for it. What?
You have to understand. You have to
We don't
understand.
believe animals have free will, and therefore they can't have a good and evil.
That's why there is no absolute morality.
No,
Sure,
but
that's
what
not-
I'm saying, maybe that's a good. I'm always looking for a unifying factor among human beings. So maybe if one guy believes that God gave this absolute sense of morality, and another guy says no, it just innately with people. Doesn't matter. I mean, they're all basically good people. Both guys. Whether I
Okay,
call
again,
it
the
God
question-
or whether I call it innate goodness, so what? What difference does it make in practice?
Okay, I'll make another point. I have researched, okay. It didn't take me 35 years to do it, but I was very interested in the name of God. And I found out that the Torah tells us explicitly in your face what this word means. It tells us, there's a verse that says the meaning of the name of God.
Mhm.
Now, the meaning is Elkanah Shemo. His name is Kana, which means
Jealous.
jealous. Now, I checked it out, and in Arabic, there is a trace of this, because in Arabic, they say jealous or jealousy, they say Yahwairan. Yahwairan. Now, since Arabic is made up of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Himyar, this is amazing. I think it's proof that this verse is actually telling us the meaning of the name of God, because the traces of Hebrew and Aramaic are like, it's 50% of the Arabic language. So you cannot ignore it. And so I go back and I say, because this is the Elkanah Shemo, it screams out the name of God. So I say, you take all of these. I'm sorry, I'm so not into Kabbalah. It sounds ridiculous to me, all of those theories about Gevurah, Tiferet, and Chesed. How much Chesed? How much Tiferet? How much Malchut? How do you reconcile all the protons and atoms? It's just not there. It's not the reason why you have to kill a sheep every morning and afternoon, because God somehow created an atom.
Yeah.
It's not a good reason to sacrifice a sheep it's a good reason to sacrifice a sheep because God told you to do it. And now the question is, how did he tell you to do it? And I think that all of our ideas for God and of God and the actual ideas of the existence of God, as the Ramban tells us of Metziut Emet, come from some kind of what, from this knowledge that we have from birth. That, how do you know? Let's say that you're born 17,000 years ago. There is no sex education. There is no videos like pornography or educational videos of how a male and a female should mate. But when you get to a certain age, you know how it's done.
Yeah.
You just know it. How do you know it? How do you know it?
DNA?
So there's many things like that you know. You have a conscience. You feel bad when you hurt someone. You feel terrible if you kill someone. Sometimes you want to kill yourself because of that. Because if you made a terrible mistake, like killing someone, decent people, sometimes they cannot cope with it. They plunge into terrible depressions and they cannot understand how such a thing happened to them.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that? Why doesn't a lion feel that?
That's a
How come a tree in Babi Yar doesn't care that under its leaves 10,000 people are murdered?
Yeah.
Does nature have morality, or is it morally neutral? So maybe only we have morality. These questions are the biggest questions about human existence, and I don't think it I don't think it reconciles with pure physics and mathematics, because physics is morally neutral. It doesn't matter really, Okay,
You're
so
right.
the answer,
You're right. It must be more to them than that. Yeah.
that there's okay, so the proton and the neutron are together in the nucleus. There's a bunch of electrons flying around them. Okay, Beseda, God made it like that. He could have made it differently. And if it was different, maybe we would look differently. Maybe we would have a head and one leg and three hands and a spine that is not like this, but it goes like that. And it's blah, 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 blah.
With no arthritis.
Well, no.
Well, if we're choosing, let's put that on the list.
It's God's choice. This is why I love the idea of the Rambam's Metziut Emet. It's because if we don't know so much, and we're trying to somehow connect this to God because we believe, then the Metziut Emet, the idea of this Metziut Emet, I think is the closest thing philosophically to maybe to the truth, if we can even talk about the truth. But that's my take on
I
it.
hear Yeshayahu Leibowitz in there somewhere.
Yes, you do, absolutely.
This is great.
Mathematics and physics and chemistry is morally neutral.
I only have about like 2 more minutes, guys, but I'll tell you, this is so great. We need to find out, do you guys know, if you don't know right now, think about it, who can make us presentation similar to what David and Harold did on now Ramban Nachmanides?
I can ask Aaron Schaefer, maybe he knows something about Ramban.
You want to ask him, Reuven?
I'll ask him, yeah.
Okay. He's also a tour guide for Israel.
Yeah, he might say he's too busy, but I can ask.
Okay. Terrific. Gentlemen, this is
Okay.
wonderful. I'm gonna protons and electrons. Can I tell you a quick joke, guys, before we leave? Just quick joke. But you have to be mathematicians to appreciate it. There's a nut house, and there's a guy sits in that house. He jumps into everybody. He goes, "I'm going to integrate you. I'm going to differentiate you." So everybody's afraid, because what he goes around integrating and differentiating everybody. Afraid. He's a boss. All of a sudden, one day, another guy comes in, a teacher. He was a former teacher from Sky School somewhere. So this guy, to ascertain his rights, jumps to him immediately and says, "I'm going to integrate you. I'm going to differentiate you." And the guy just no reaction. He says, "Are you afraid of me?" "No. I'm going to integrate you, differentiate. He says, no, I'm not. It's a Y. I'm e to the X.
I'm what?
I'm e to the X.
I'm into the X stuff.
There's there's an easier joke to understand. You tell someone like you meet someone religious and believes that the world it exists for only 6,000 years, and say 15 billion years. I cannot even comprehend this number. What's 15 billion? It doesn't. There's no such number exist. So I go, okay, no 15 billion years, but you can comprehend 15 billion shekels, can't you? That you can understand.
That's right. All right,
That
guys.
number exists.
Yeah, no, very good, gentlemen. Very, very, very pleasant. We'll see you guys next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. If we don't
willing.
find some Ramban, we'll find the topic. But let's see if we can find Ram.
Bye, Reuven. Bye, Reuven. Good to see you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Shavua Tov.
Bye, bye.
Shmutov.